Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about Pakistan's energy sector, the kind of problems that we are seeing at this time. Of course, as far as the government is concerned, it maintains that it's a case of omissions and in some cases, timely decisions that could have been taken by the last government that could perhaps have led to a better situation today. We'll also be talking about, of course, some of it is related to the high rising energy prices in the international market, which is also what we'll be talking about overall in terms of what can we expect in the future as far as the energy crisis at this time is concerned. Is it likely to get better in the future? All of that today, also coupled with the political situation as far as Punjab is concerned, as far as overall opposition's rallies and jalsas are concerned, all of that today. On Perspective, I have with me today Abdul Jaleel, who's a senior economist. Thank you for being with us. We also have with us Dr. Hina Aslam, who's a research fellow, head energy and head at STPI. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Gulfaraz Ahmed, who's former Secretary Petroleum. Before we go on and talk about what kind of problems we are expecting and likely to see in the next couple of months, let's look at a package on the problems being faced in the energy sector today.
The government of PTI went too far in its animosity against PMLN that it did not avoid hurting projects of national importance and public interest. One such glaring manifestation is criminal negligence in power sector, which owing to mismanagement and deliberate ignorance is reeling under stress. Plunging into throes of darkness of sweltering load shedding, the country whose power generation during the PMLN's tenure grew from 22,812 megawatt in 2012 to 2013 to 29,573 megawatts till this year. Installed generation capacity saw a 30% rise in the 5 years due to diversification in energy mix, and power generation registered a 22% increase to 117,326 gigawatts hours. The government of PMLN installed modern but inexpensive power plants, generated capacity from cheap coal and liquefied natural gas, and overcome load shedding. Also, the PMLN government established new solar and wind energy projects, in which 18 wind power projects having cumulative production capacity of 937.27 megawatt reached commercial operation in their 5 years tenure. 6 solar power projects having 418 megawatt capacity were made operational during the period. Now the situation in Pakistan's power sector is almost in the operation theatre, coupled with the high and rising energy prices in the international market, and simply keep it going is a miracle of kind not known before in the sector. Fahad Ahmed Missan, PTV World, Islamabad.
Welcome back. Jaleel Sab, overall, as far as the situation with energy is concerned, we saw some of the problems that we are seeing as far as the energy sector is concerned. But in your opinion, what is the situation likely to be in the next couple of months? Of course, we have the PMLN saying that when we left, there was little to no electricity, there was no load shedding, there was no shortage, so to speak. And now, you know what the situation is. We're looking at 12, 14, 16 hours sometimes as far as shortage of electricity is concerned.
Actually, there are 2-3 reasons in this which should have been attended long ago. Unfortunately, the previous government has also missed very golden opportunity of buying petrol at a very cheap rate, rather at a zero rating. It was available in an international market. And the international oil company was ready to provide them free of the cost since they did not have a conservation facilities in their own country. That cost a huge, that requires a lot of expense. But that was the golden opportunity which was missed. Number one. And number two, LPG, that was another sector in which we could have benefited at a very cheap cost. Now the LPG price has gone up as well. And as you know very well, in the post-COVID period, the energy sector, initially they suffered a lot of setback, low investment, and the low output as well. And now suddenly, then the international supply chain have also faced a lot of disruption. As a result of it, the prices of the energies, the product, they have gone up. Now the oil prices in international matter have gone up, whereas on the contrary, Pakistan do not have developed an alternate resources to to provide immediate relief to people. For example, our hydro sector is the cheapest sector with the help of which we can supply energy. Unfortunately, our dams, they were started late, and yet they are passing through the stage of construction as well, and it requires
Let me come
lot.
back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Hina. Hina, other than slowing projects, in some case the Carrot Hydro, Shanghai Thar, and also the higher cost of LNG, because somehow the last government failed to enter into long-term LNG contracts when the price was significantly lower. That and the high cost of dollar, circular debt are some of the reasons that are being cited. How far do you agree with this? Hina, can you hear me? Gee, I think there's a problem with audio. Dr. Gul Faraz, the same question. Do you agree with these reasons that are being cited as the failures to be able, that we are seeing the shortage of electricity, the energy crisis that it's right now being witnessed by Pakistan?
Okay, there is no doubt that there's a worldwide energy crisis which has been accentuated because of the Russian-Ukraine war, and before that it was the increasing demand of oil but not being enough production capacity. So at this point in time, 4 major oil-producing countries, Venezuela, Libya, Iran, and Russia, are not available in the market, which is accentuating the situation further, and the oil price is likely to rise further. However, talking about Pakistan does not have storage capacity for oil. They barely have 30 days storage, and even if they are able to purchase the 30 days, that's not enough to weather the shortcomings which are likely to be seen in the near future. The other thing is that the LNG prices are linked to the oil price. So the LNG contracts that you do, it says that 13% of the oil price or 14% of the oil price, and therefore even if you have old contracts, the day the LNG cargo is received, the price of oil applies there. So it becomes expensive even for the old contracts. Now, the storage capacity, there's no storage capacity for LNG or natural gas in Pakistan, and the storage capacity for oil is limited. So anything like saying that the people responsible could have foreseen this thing and could have purchased at cheaper price, that is not factually correct looking at the oil market. Now, the immediate relief that is likely to come to the people of Pakistan, that is the hydro component, because every time during July, August, September season, when we get the most snow melt and we get the maximum hydro generation, to likely this time we could get up to 10 to 12,000 megawatt of hydroelectricity starting with the middle of this month, and therefore that would provide some relief. But looking at the greatest burden on Pakistan's energy sector today are those 12,000 megawatts of IPPs which were negotiated under CPC. Their terms are very onerous for Pakistan. The capacity price that we are likely to pay, even if we do not use the electricity, is beyond our financial capacity. And that is why the IMF has asked the government of Pakistan to renegotiate those contracts. So those are the structural issues that need to be addressed. But as I said before, that there is a little bit of minimum relief possible to us, and that is the hydro support in the next 2, 3, 4 months.
Right, let me come back to you. We have Hina Aslam with us. Ji, Hina, as far as the energy sector is concerned, I don't know if you've been following what Dr. Gul Faraz was saying. He was saying that some of it has to do with the unpredictability of the international market at this time, other than, of course, delaying in some cases. But do you agree that as far as, projects like Carrot Hydro and Shanghai Thar delay in those areas have also led to a significantly worse energy crisis today?
Thank you so much, MAHRUKH. I think it was some connectivity issue earlier, so apologies for that.
No problem.
And I think, as the earlier colleagues have already mentioned, that this current energy crisis is not that we are facing today. It was long in making. It could have been better if they had, our policymakers or the decision makers could have made a few smarter decisions over the past decade.
What do you mean when you say that? Because there's a lot of narrative going back and forth as far as on energy particularly. What do you mean when you say smarter? Do you mean timely decisions? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Timely decisions, some misguided policies by the previous and the current government. Of course, we do know that earlier in the current government's tenure, the government tried to overcome the power shortages by inviting foreign investors and lenders to help establish kind of these power projects that we have. We are bound to pay the capacity payments today. A lot to do with the increased Pakistan's risk exposure to, of course, the supply shocks, the global supply shocks that we are facing, and of course, considerable surplus power generation that was paid in for dollars if it was not never utilized. Subsequently, if we look at the last government strategy, in terms of, if we look at the Pakistan's currency devaluation by 48% now, it has really put the country in a difficult situation for the repayments, along with the debt, along with the, coupled major bad decisions that have really led us to what we are facing today. Okay. So there's unfortunately no short-term solution that we could see is now. There's a lack of investments that we are seeing in the renewable energy sector that needs to be accelerated. As I said, there's a long-term crisis. There's no short-term solution. But we are seeing some of the, measures being taken by the current government in terms of the energy efficiency, like
what is the best case scenario at this time as far as the government? What can the government do? You talk about long term, of course, but in short term, what are the options at this time open to the government?
Well, the government, what is doing at the moment is the best they can do, as you said yourself. So we have the energy efficiency. We should look into what needs to be done in terms of the saving the electricity to be able to overcome the shortages that we are facing. So the world is moving fast at an accelerating pace to something that, we are kind of far behind in what the world is. So, a lot to do with the potential solutions that we have, but that needs a very strong commitment.
Also, as far as economy is concerned, Hina, let me come back to you. Jalisa, sure. Also, when we talk about devaluation and high cost of dollars, circular debt, all of those things, so obviously the impact on the energy sector when the economy starts doing better will also be huge, right?
Exactly. It has got a very serious negative impact upon chain supply system. Number one, the cost of course, inflation will go up highly because the price of every product, price of manufacturing, it will also go up. Price of the raw material will also go up, and similarly transportation as well. And this is what is happening in the country as well. That's why the government needs to take some immediate, measure to provide relief to at least medium and the small investor as well. Because if their position became vulnerable, then it will become difficult to sustain the economy. Number one. And number two is that, we have missed a lot of opportunity as well. We, in our rural area, we have got some raw material available in form of a biogas, biogas from the local manures and etc. etc. Unfortunately, the project was started, but it could never take off because of lack of attention of the people. Otherwise, these small hills and rural areas, number one.
As far as energy is concerned, as far as the last government, they maintain that it's always been on top of their priority list, and they've always been, why do you think these decisions were, were put on the back burner, so to speak?
Actually, there was a lot of disconnect within their investment policy, I would say. The economic policy, it runs through through a cycle, number one, and secondly, it has to be interconnected with taxation policy, with monetary policy, with the investment policy, with your and
you think it
with the
wasn't
human resource.
connected
There was a lot of
seriously?
disconnect between them, and I would say that this is a basic fault in our governance structure and the approach which has been adopted.
Okay.
And precisely, I would say that there was no broader vision or a mega, which could entrench all these factors within the mega framework of a economic development policy as well.
Okay,
So this was a failure. For example, Qatar is one of those countries which can provide you a lot of gas, in shape of LNG, and Qatar has got biggest oil reserve. But unfortunately, we have failed to tap this resource while it was available at a very cheap rate then.
And now it's not, of course.
Now, of course, because the whole world is now is desperately looking for new resources of energy, and the China is facing a great threat because shortage of energy will bring its entire wheel of industry to stand still.
Let me
and
come
this
back
is
to
what
you.
is happening.
Gulfarazab, how fair is it, in your opinion, to say today that the last government should perhaps have been able to anticipate this kind of a crisis, or in your expert opinion, they should have been able to see that these prices are likely to rise when we talk about Qatar in particular, which is what Dalil Saab is saying?
First of all, I want to highlight one particular point of energy security of any country. Energy security depends on two fundamental parameters. One is the exports of a country. If the energy import is within 15% of the total export earning, that country enjoys energy security. So one of the fundamental points that we need to do today is increase our exports so that it improves our ability to import energy even if it becomes expensive. And here I don't think anyone can flaw the last government. They were on the track to increase exports, which is the priority issue. The second thing is the efficiency of energy. In fact, Pakistan is one of those countries which is energy inefficient. If you look at all the energy appliances, household appliances or industrial appliances, these are among the most inefficient in the world. And even if you go buy a heater or a geyser, it does not prominently tell you what is the energy consumption like wattage. So first of all, a multi-pronged attack has to be maintained at this point in time. Increase the exports as much as you can. Try to regulate the appliances to improve efficiency. And one area which has the potential, revolutionary potential, is the solar. Particularly 40% of Pakistan population is not connected with the grid, and they're not likely to get the grid because they are sparsely populated. So we must have a real emphasis on solarization of those regions which are not on the grid, and even those on the grid, they should be rooftop solar, roof of the houses, of the factories, of the offices. These should be solarized. That is perhaps the quickest and most economical way because the cost is generally borne by the people of the country.
But Gulfarazab, there is some controversy as far as solar also now, as far as the last government is concerned, giving, as far as giving rebates, as far as this government is concerned, it seems to have gone back on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's not the way that last government went forward as far as solar is concerned. Didn't they make it more expensive?
Yes, the point is that I'm not talking about grid solar. If you set up the power plants like that power plant that we have in the desert, and you put it on the grid, and 40% of the power is lost in the grid, that solar becomes too expensive. It's not affordable. I'm talking about household solar where there's no grid involved, where there's no wastage or loss involved. And most of the time, the investment is by the people themselves. So that is the most effective way of supplementing power. One of the reasons that the solar may not have been pushed for last few years because we had overcapacity of generation. The CPC project, if you put together, we had more capacity, installed capacity than the use of the power. Even today, you have nearly 35,000 megawatt of installed capacity, and our maximum power demand goes to 25,000, that too in the extreme season. So from that point of view, the public sector may not have pushed solarization in the public sector, but the whole world is trying to revolutionize solar at the household level, and that is what we must do. And as I said before, that the hydel is going to give us relief for next 3 months, because the hydel will go to full capacity in new power projects like Road 720, and then Suki Kinari is likely to be commissioned in a few months' time. That is 850 megawatt. So the biggest support and biggest help to Pakistan's energy sector is going to come from hydel sector in this very season.
Hina, if you've been following Dr. Gulfaraz, he's saying that as far as hydel is concerned, it's likely to be, go to its full capacity, and that may provide us some relief. So in terms of the next couple of months, do you look at things getting better as far as the energy crisis is concerned at all?
MAHRUKH, I'm listening to really good interventions coming from the colleagues earlier, and they rightly pointed out that hydro is a potential solution. But coming from another perspective, I would like to share that, these large hydros have a lot to come along with. I am talking about the environmental sustainability and the hazards that are associated with these large hydros. That is considered not to be really feasible and sustainable in the global market. What we really need to look at to explore is the solar and the wind. As if my colleague earlier have also elaborated on the unprecedented rise in the solar PV installations throughout the country, the solar, the powering industries or the homes or the tube wells and the water pumps for irrigation. This is a kind of a welcome boom that we are seeing, and also with the rising cost of the tariffs that everybody's facing, I think the solar is the real potential. And as if I could tell you some numbers from our research, I can tell you that if Pakistan utilizes 0.071% of the potential, it can overcome the energy crisis. But unfortunately, there's a lot of misalignment between the government's plans and the policies. The example that I could just narrate here is the recent plan of IBSET and the alternate renewable energy policy. That is a conflicting kind of a contradictory targets of meeting the clean energy sources by 2030. And instead, that while we know that the renewable energy is presenting an immense potential in this country to deal with the energy crisis in Pakistan, I think the government really needs to look at how they could bring in and ease the investments and promote and upscale the RE uptake. And when I say renewable energy, I stand with mostly variable renewable energy. So for me, in my perspective, Pakistan needs to upscale and really have huge investments in solar and wind. They not only provide the provision of the cheaper alternative resources to the imported ones that we are still trying to, work upon, but also we need to look at the distributed power generation in the form of like mini grids or microgrids or the standalone solar systems, or so that we can really ensure the reliable and sustainable energy to our communities and to our nation. How we could do that is how we could promote that into the 50% of the population not having access to electricity in Pakistan at this time of the era, with a lot of excessive load shedding in the cities of Pakistan as well, and the areas with high technical and line losses. I think that is one of the potential area that needs to be worked upon and that needs to be concentrated upon in this regard. We need it is really crucial to ensure the timely implementation of these policies. Otherwise, we will not go anywhere after this, and there will be we'll be just tightly bounded to whatever we are facing at this time.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to go to Gulfaraz Saab. Ji, Gulfaraz Saab, if you've been following, as far as Hina is concerned, she's very categorically saying that as far as solar is concerned, that is the way forward. And you've also elucidated on that same theme. Do you think that, as in the next couple of years, how long do you think it will take for us to perhaps switch to a large extent if we have the government behind us and the government corporation, the government which at this time, of course, seems to be focusing in that area particularly?
I will dilate on solar as you have identified, but just before that, I want to make one more point. There is another source of power in the world and also in Pakistan, and that's in nuclear power. At this point in time, we have about 4,000 megawatt of installed nuclear power capacity, and it is producing all the time because nuclear power plants are operated with greatest efficiency. We also have a strategic plan in Pakistan that by 2030, our total nuclear power generation capacity should go to 8,500 megawatt. So we have about 7 years left in which we have to add about the same capacity, about 8,000 megawatt of nuclear. Now, nuclear power plants are expensive to construct, but thereafter running them are relatively less expensive because the nuclear fuel is the least expensive of all the fuels. So that is one area in which Pakistan government needs to maintain its initiative and continue to add about 500 megawatt of nuclear power plant every year from now till the 2030 period. Now,
Thank
as
you so
far
much
as
for being
the
with us, Gulfaraz Saab. Thank you for your very valuable input on the energy sector. I'm going to go to Rafiq Rajwana Saab from the PMLN on the overall political situation. Ji, Rajwana Saab, we have now had the judgment, the written judgment from the Supreme Court on the issue of Hamza Shahbaz and the CM Punjab issue.
Yes.
Overall, as far as the by-polls are concerned, how do you look at the situation in light of that judgment particularly? Because there seems to be, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, they seem to be satisfied that there is agreement that the election will be able to go forward without any kind of mishap. But overall, how does the PMLN feel about the by-polls at this time?
There is one question regarding the judgment rendered by the Honorable Supreme Court yesterday. Actually, it was some sort of mutual consensus between the three parties, PTI, Chaudhry Parvez Ilahi Sahab and Mr. Hamza Shahbaz. According to my view, speaking purely constitutionally, the judgment of the High Court was right in all perspectives. And it was according to the constitutional provision that the runoff election has to be taken place. Irrespective of my reservation on the earlier opinion given by the Honorable Supreme Court regarding the non-counting of the votes and almost it amounts to rewriting the Constitution because Article 95, which is in the Constitution, but vote of no confidence has been made redundant. Anyhow, that's my view. But since there is a judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, we have to bow before that. As far as the question of implementation or application of that defection clause of not counting the vote is concerned, I still have the reservation that it should have been prospective, not retrospective. The election of the Chief Minister of Punjab had already taken place. The result was notified. The oath was administered to the Chief Minister. It was passed and closed transaction. But again, I will reiterate that bow before the judgment of the Supreme Court. Yesterday, the judgment, I have fully read it. It was just a gesture, good gesture shown by all the political parties who were parties in the case, and particularly Hamza Shahbaz, who categorically emphasized that he has complete number game, and even if after a day or two the runoff election was supposed to be held, I hope he would have been elected as the Chief Minister. But anyhow, the grace which has been shown by him as well as the other political parties, actually the Supreme Court has given a breathing space in the larger interest of the country or whatsoever we may call it, that the runoff election under Article 30 sub Article 4 has been postponed with the consensus of the parties till 22nd of July after the holding of the election, by-election on 17th of July. So I think, the Supreme Court has rather overemphasized regarding the conduct of fair election and following the code of conduct of election, and has also.
That's interesting, Rijwana Saab, the choice of words overemphasized. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Ali Asjad Malli from the PTI. Ali, as far as the by polls are concerned now, is it the best you could have expected? You know, it certainly seems that way from the Supreme Court. According to Rijwana Saab, he's saying that, you know, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on free and fair elections. Certainly, the Supreme Court has done so. What do you expect now from the by polls? You know, because this is the best as far as the Supreme Court could have done in terms of, you know, what suits the PTI. How do you look at it overall now, your position with the 5 seats coming in, the reserved seats from the Election Commission? Do you think you'll be able to get the numbers to oust the CM at this time?
100%. Thank you, MAHRUKH, for having me on your show again. I believe that we've achieved what maximum we could have achieved. I think a little bit fishy what was in the judgment is that he shouldn't have been the chief minister till the 27th. Hamza shouldn't have been the chief minister. We're having 20 by-elections over there. His election was, well, my colleague was saying something else, but I totally disagree. It was unconstitutional. The speaker stood in the gallery and the rest of the people weren't allowed to cast votes. Police entered the provincial assembly for the first time in the history. The speaker was beaten up. The ministers were beaten up. Whatever happened was very, very... And the deputy speaker before that, even though he became a lota, but even though I still condemn that he shouldn't have been... people pulled his hair, etc., etc. So it was very badly managed and it was in bad taste. And,
but in the interest
all have
of having, you know, laying this whole controversy to rest, for the lack of a better word, the Supreme Court has stepped up. They've also issued certain, they made certain comments. They said that, you know, once the political parties came to them, then it was incumbent upon them to adjudicate on these matters. But of course, these are largely political, and they would prefer, of course, that they stay in the political arena.
I 100% agree with you on this. I think we have to say that let bygones be bygones and move forward. My only contention is that Hamza Shahbaz should not have been the chief minister till the by-election and his next election. You know how things work in Pakistan and how the establishment and the civil bureaucracy works in Pakistan. So he should not have been there. This is not fair.
So how do you expect now? So what are your expectations from the by polls then? Considering the overall scenario, you're saying that Hamza Shahbaz should not have been. But now that the scenario is quite clear what it's likely to be, what do you expect now? What does the PTI expect? Do you think your voter will forge ahead? You will be able to get those seats? How do you look at it?
Inshallah, we're very hopeful. The odds, the materialistic odds are all against us. The establishment, the civil establishment, and the biggest player of them all is the Election Commission of Pakistan. They're not going to help us play a fair game. And they're supposed to ensure it, but they're not going to do it. We've seen it before. That's why we've been asking for the Chief Election Commissioner's resignation throughout. And we still, our demand is there. But we are in the process. We are in the democratic process. We will fight till the last breath. And hopefully, inshallah, truth will prevail.
When you say let bygones be bygones, do you think that there is that philosophy or that is likely to extend also in the National Assembly? As far as your members are concerned, do you think it's likely that they can return and you can be an effective opposition in the National Assembly also?
No. By bygones, I mean that what happened in the Provincial Assembly. I'm not saying that we're going to accept lotas. The lotas have to be barred for life. And this has to be done once and for all. Otherwise, it becomes a tradition and it becomes very, very.
But there's already a Supreme Court judgment on that. Barring that, do you think there's any chance that your members can return in the National Assembly, or no? That's not happening?
No, I don't think so. And we want the Lotus to be barred for life. Simple as that. We don't care about the government. We want to set a precedent that this should not happen again. People should not be bought and sold. Members should not be bought and sold. And we have to bury this once and for all. Otherwise, I don't think you'll ever have
But you don't think that you are likely to lose out more with giving, giving the field open to the PDM, the PMLN government at this time, rather than having any sort of real opposition in the National Assembly at this time?
Yeah, you're right. And thank you very much for admitting that there's no real opposition in the National Assembly. We had this conversation last time as well, because I also made a point that Mr. Raja Riaz Saab, jo ke lote hue hain, he's not the real opposition leader.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Rajwana Saab. Ji, Rajwana Saab, your comments on the likely scenario as far as the by-polls are concerned, and also as far as the National Assembly is concerned, because, on the one hand, we are seeing the, magnanimity from Shehbaz Sharif Saab, the Prime Minister, is talking about charters, and, he's saying that perhaps, they can talk, there can be some sort of, working relationship. But on the other hand, he's constantly being rebuffed. But when we talk about the ultimate loss, what do you see, as an experienced politician, who's really losing out here?
If we keep on fighting like this, criticizing each other, and not behaving, then the nation has to fail, and ultimately the political parties will fail too. I want to put the record straight that as far as the question of legitimacy of the Chief Minister Hamza Shehbaz is concerned, at the very outset, constitutionally I have explained that, coupled with the stance taken by the party PTI, my learned friend was showing his reservation. He has a right to show his reservation, but whatsoever is the policy of the party, whatsoever consent they have given, and they have conceded to the retention of the minister without going to the constitutional aspect. I think that he could have been retained, and today or tomorrow the by-election, the run-up poll would have been there anyhow. The other question is that the political scenario, the opposition leader in the National Assembly, Raja Riaz, the induction of, or the election of, or selection of Raja Riaz as leader of the opposition is because of the fault and non-political act of the PTI. Had they not resigned from the parliament, had they been the part of the parliament instead of going to the street or going to the road, they could have simultaneously, while sitting in the parliament. Today, Mr. Imran would have been the leader of the opposition, and he would have been in a better situation to participate in the proceedings of the parliament. If Raja Riaz has been elected, then the question is, I will not go into Lotaism, because in 2018 election, the planes were full of people who were holding our tickets or who were contesting the election as independent. That time has gone now. Now let's talk about the future. Whether the country at the verge of economic crisis, can we afford this political crisis and unrest constantly being created by Khan Sahab? Whether it is not the time that all PTI people, all PTI learned, respected MNAs should come back, sit in the parliament. Their resignation, according to today's knowledge, I think that their resignation, barring few people, have not been accepted. Come on, and have a dual role while sitting in the parliament and while coming on the street and on the roads. This is their right. They can hold the jalsas, they can do anything. at this verge at which the country is now, I would say, I would suggest, I would request that as yesterday the political parties showed their unanimity and showed their grace, they should also show the grace, and let's contest the by-poll in a manner as a sportsman. And Khan Sahib is the recognized, well-renowned sportsman. He should show sportsman spirit. As far as the partiality or impartiality of the Election Commission is concerned, Election Commission is doing well. The Chief Election Commissioner was also recommended to be appointed by Mr. Imran Khan, by PTI also. And so far as the by-polls are concerned, by-elections are concerned, so far as the campaign is concerned, nobody has lodged a complaint, barring few places in which it is common that the political rivals, they create some mess or there is some dispute. And the Supreme Court of Pakistan, I had earlier said at the very outset, the Supreme Court of Pakistan has overemphasized, has put more stress and more words and clear words, has said that the election will be held in a transparent and fair manner under Article 217, 18, 19, 20, 220. It is the duty of the Election Commission of Pakistan to hold the election transparently, fairly, justly, and to follow the code of conduct, and it depends on the candidates also. They should also follow for that.
Right. Thank you so much, Rajwana Saab. Thank you for your valuable input. Jalil Saab, do you think overall, you heard both Rafiq Rajwana Saab and Ali Asjad Mali, do you think that likely this will probably be settled in an amicable manner, which is what the Supreme Court is looking for?
I think the ice is, now snow is melting, and the PTI have shown some kind of a friendly gesture to the government so far as accommodating, and accepting the Mr. Hamza Shahbaz as the Chief Minister of Punjab for an interim period. This is a good move.
But
in
do
the
they
sense,
really have a choice? I mean, after the Supreme Court verdict?
I mean, the High Court, the High Court has, once again, they have given, in their judgment, they have said that the ex-Chief Minister, Mr. Buzdar, is now his office will become once again vectored, and he can take over for an interim period. And I think that would have caused, as a result of this move, it would have caused a lot of uncertainty in the province as well. And Punjab have seen enough uncertainty over the last 3-4 months as well. And I think with this approach, we should try to set things in a straight path, because the economy is suffering a lot because of multiple factors.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us. Abdul Jalil Saab, thank you for being with us. Dr. Hina Aslam, thank you for joining us today. Dr. Gulfaraz Ahmed, thank you for being with us. Ali Asjad Mali, thank you for joining us. Rafiq Rajwana Saab, thank you for being with us today. As far as the political situation is concerned, certainly one is hopeful that there can be some kind of accord between the two major political parties, being PMLN, PTI, the PDM as a whole, so that there can be, some sort of, we can of course determine, the by-polls will determine largely which side the chips fall as far as their results are concerned. And perhaps, the snow is melting, like Jalil Saab has said, and things will get easier in terms of the relationship, again, between the opposition and a government. Let's hope that that happens. Thank you so much for joining us today.